Before we begin this video, I do want to say that this is not an idea that was originally mine. This was inspired by a video that Dave McCrae did a few years ago, where he took the individual portrayals and ranked them one by one, felt it necessary to give credit where credit is due. Hey freaks and friends, and welcome to day 17 of the 31 Days of October. The daily content continues with the 45 Years of Halloween special. Today we are going to be ranking the portrayals of Dr. Loomis, film by film. Make sure to stab that subscribe button and slash that bell icon so you don't miss out on this daily Halloween content all through the month of October. Dr. Sam Loomis is probably one of the most pivotal characters in the Halloween franchise, being Michael's psychiatrist in the early films, and sort of the Van Helsing to his Dracula in the later half of the series, even as far back as the first film, but really as the 4th, 5th, and 6th films came out, there was more of that sort of Van Helsing Dracula sort of relation between Loomis and Myers, and the portrayal by Donald Pleasence lasted for a good portion of the original series, and he brought much needed gravitas to the franchise as a whole. He brought some sort of charm that was definitely lacking after the first film. That's not to say that the other films are bad, they are absolutely far from that, well, most of them anyway, but the Dr. Loomis portrayals vary film by film. Whether we're looking at all of the Donald Pleasence portrayals and the Malcolm McDowell portrayal, that is also to include the voiceovers that have been incorporated throughout the series. Those are a little less prominent than the proper on-screen Loomises. Those will be taken into consideration here, but not a full-fledged part of the ranking. Speaking of the ranking, let's get to that. But we're going to kick off the ranking with the honorable and dishonorable mentions. We will get the dishonorable mention out of the way first, and that is going to go to Tom Kane, who did the prologue opening credits for Halloween H20, H2O, depending on whichever you want to call it. He does the Blackest Eyes speech, and his voice work, I guess, is sort of, he's apparently a very prominent voice actor, but he was definitely not the ideal vocal candidate for Dr. Loomis, and again, this was probably before a lot of us fans were as openly nitpicky as we are today. His voice just doesn't really capture that same energy. He does deliver the speech with a fairly respectable cadence, but the quality of his voice is not up to par with that of Donald Pleasence. So Tom Kane, unfortunately, is the dishonorable mention here. The honorable mention for the Dr. Loomis portrayal is going to Colin Mahan, who did the voiceover in Halloween 2018 and was the flashback Dr. Loomis in Halloween Kills. He brought just enough of a resemblance to the role in the flashback for Halloween Kills, where it's doing the 1978 bit. You almost feel like that could be Donald Pleasence there, and in 2018 when you hear his voice through the old tape machine,
my suggestion is termination. Death.
It allows for just a little bit of a slip up, and I feel if Tom Kane had come in for that, he could have pulled off and made his way into the honorable mention. Using the distortion of the tape recording, it kind of allows a little bit of leeway there. Maybe I am a little biased because of a very public dislike for H20, H2O, again, whichever you want to call it. Halloween H2O, no, that one. But yeah, Colin Mahan, honorable mention for Dr. Loomis. Let's get to the ranking proper. Coming in at number 7 in the last place of the official Dr. Loomis ranking goes to the 2009 portrayal by Malcolm McDowell in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. This is an interesting one because this is probably the most unique take we have on Dr. Loomis in the whole franchise, and for that it should probably go higher in my ranking, especially when you consider just how much I really like that film. You would expect that maybe I would have this Dr. Loomis portrayal up, but looking at it in the context of this is Dr. Loomis, that brings us roll down. I do like the deviation from what we would want. Here, Malcolm McDowell kind of strays from that, and he incorporates more of this prima donna type. I have survived this tragedy and now I'm making a lot of money off of it. And I think Rob Zombie, when he wrote that, he did a pretty good job at sort of taking what we expect and flipping it on its head, and Malcolm McDowell did play that pretty well. It just has the misfortune of being the worst specific Loomis portrayal. I do like this character direction, but in terms of what should Dr. Loomis be, I feel that it just doesn't really service that role. Next up at number 6. This is an interesting one here. We have the 1989 portrayal by Donald Pleasance in Halloween 5. Now, this might be one of the most entertaining bits of Dr. Loomis we get. I do have a lot of fun, honestly, watching the drunken Donald Pleasance playing Dr. Loomis here. He's definitely off his rocker in this film. He's not as cool and collected as he had been in the previous films up to this point. There are certain things that Donald Pleasance does in his portrayal here that just feel a little anti-Loomis. For example, when he's using Jamie as bait, I could understand him using somebody to lure Michael in, but it's the way he goes about it that just feels a little off. When he grabs her and he's holding her up saying, "Hey Michael, come and get her, come and get her," that just feels a little off. It doesn't feel like something that Dr. Loomis would typically do. However, it does have that believability in the sense that he is trying to come up with a plan to trap and kill Michael once and for all. We know how that goes. And I do love that part where he drops the chain down on Michael and just starts whooping him with the 2x4. That's probably one of the best Loomis moments, hands down, for my money, but it still has the misfortune of being lower on the list. Again, not to say that I dislike it in any way, shape, or form. I just like it less than the others. The number 5 spot is going to be occupied by Malcolm McDowell once again, with the 2007 portrayal in Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. He brought a lot of interesting characteristics to the role that were different than what we had with Donald Pleasance. He has that a little more theatricality that he brings to the role, a bit more dramatic. The angle with Dr. Loomis here is relatively fresh. I mean, we see it repeated but made into a monster in the next film. But here I do like the idea that he tried for 17 years and he just couldn't really do anything with Myers at this point, so he says, "Hey, fuck it, I'm gonna cash in, write a book." The whole fame and fortune from it doesn't really get to his head just yet. Again, that's still like a new phase in his life, so who's to say if Michael hadn't broken out, he probably still would have been on the road that he went to in Halloween 2. Again, I really just like what Malcolm McDowell does here. Of course, as you can tell by the way the ranking is going, he is not the top Loomis overall, but fine actor, great choice for the character. Just a really fun portrayal of Dr. Loomis here. He's definitely got a lot of great lines in both films. I really like the way he delivers it here. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the 1995 portrayal by Donald Pleasance in Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is another interesting one where he's not quite the Mad Hatter type of doctor anymore. He's definitely calmed down after the events of Halloween 5. Once he gets that realization that Myers is out there again, he does snap back into action. He is a lot slower. Unfortunately, Donald Pleasance's screen time was cut from this film drastically. A lot of that has to do with the test audiences who had no business being a test audience for a film that was already as troubled as this one was. But everything that Donald Pleasance is allowed to bring to the role here is some of his best work, I think, in the series. I like something about that almost underplayed Dr. Loomis, just that calmness, that weakness that you could hear in him. It's really sad, but it's really interesting at the same time, especially when you know what happened to Donald Pleasance during filming, where he passed away like right at the end of filming before the release. That just makes this one a lot more special in a lot of ways. A very sentimental appearance. And this is just one that means a lot to me all around. It's the first one that I saw, you guys know by this point. I don't know, I just really love everything that he is allowed to do in here that we can see. If you want to see more of him, definitely check out the producer's cut. Number 3 spot for Dr. Loomis, we are looking at the Halloween 4 portrayal, once again by Donald Pleasance. Here, he's definitely riding that fine line between the Halloween 1 and 2 and Halloween 5 sort of role, where he's very determined to get Michael. He's kind of starting to lose his mind, but he's not completely out there like he will be in Halloween 5. This might be peak Loomis in the series, honestly. And I was actually really contemplating whether or not this was going to go in the second or first place. But it did ultimately come down to third place because, well, you'll see when we get there. This definitely feels like the most determined Dr. Loomis, honestly. His dedication to saving the town is really visible here. Like, this is definitely the most he really puts himself out there to try and stop Michael. Like, he's not playing games here, but he's not ready to go to the full extreme where he's gonna completely throw his health on the line here. Of course, he does offer himself to Michael at the rest stop, little diner, but here he's just peak fucking Loomis here in Halloween 4. Our runner-up for the best Loomis portrayal goes to the Halloween 2 1981 portrayal. Once again, by, of course, Donald Pleasance. Here, this one could easily pair with the first film, as it does take place, just minutes, seconds after the first film ends. So he's still playing the role in that same vein. It's almost better in some ways because we get a little more of it. He's starting to understand the character a little bit more. He's getting a better grasp on how to play the character. And here's where you can see him starting to come into that sort of Van Helsing style where he's the only one who knows. Like when Marion Chambers is trying to tell him about the file, and he's like, no, I know everything about this. I know everything about this. He just happens to be like a step behind Myers throughout 70-80% of the film, and the climax in this, when he does end up encountering Michael, it's probably one of the coolest moments in the series, where he understands that the only way to stop Myers is to end his life with Myers, and that is something that I think is very cool, and it's got a very Frankenstein-y feel to it. So it's very Universal Monster in a lot of ways, because there's already the Van Helsing and Dracula parallel, but you also have the Frankenstein's monster parallel there too. So yeah, the Halloween 2 Dr. Loomis is really special, and Donald Pleasance is just so much fun in this one. Number 1 is going to be the 1978 portrayal by the one, the only, Donald Pleasance. What is there to say about this specific portrayal by Donald Pleasance that hasn't been said already? This is definitely one of the most iconic characters in a horror film for my money. I'm sure there would be a lot of people who would agree with that also. I would hope, anyway. The monologues that he has in this,
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
I still get freaking chills every time when I watch that, and it's one of those scenes I appreciate more and more every time I watch it, and I've appreciated it quite a bit for quite a while, so it's almost an obsessive appreciation at this point. Kidding maybe. This is probably the most serious that he portrays the character too in this one. He doesn't dick around a whole lot like you'll see him doing in the future films. The only time he really cracks a smile in this film, and it might be like the only time in the whole franchise. Now there might be like another time, but one of the few times he cracks a smile in the franchise is when he scares Lonnie away from the Myers house, and that's one of the funnest moments in the series there. And of course the iconic ending of the film where he encounters Michael who's trying to strangle Laurie, shoots him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times right off the balcony, and that delivery of that final line.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Can it get any better than that? So there you have it, guys. That was my portrayal of the Dr. Loomis rankings. That one was a lot of fun. It was harder than I was expecting. There were a few of the choices that were actually pretty easy, but there were a few where I struggled. The top 3, namely. go ahead down below, let me know how you would rank the Dr. Loomis portrayals, and be sure to follow along for the rest of this 45 years of Halloween for the 31 days of October. We'll see you guys tomorrow.